Hello and welcome to another Pixel Game Maker tutorial. Today we're going to go over animation interpolation. This is a very powerful option in the animations tab that will get you a lot of mileage out of just one image. And we're going to show this off today. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, so I brought these three images into a new project so that we can be free of distractions, and we're going to animate them using interpolation. So we have this let's do this. We'll think of like an opening sequence. It does some cool things, and then you start the level. We've also got this horizontal kind of a line thing that we're going to be using. This can be used for, say, growing a path from point A to point B, or it can be used for, say, a health bar or something like that. It will take a little different process when you're setting it up for the interpolation. And then the last one that we'll do is we'll take this sword and we'll animate a swing out of it. You can see this one in the sample, the T-Cool sample, where they use these weapons as their attacks, and that will be how they animate it. So with that said, let's go to the animations tab. And so let's start with the opening sequence, okay? So we'll just call this like an opening sequence here, and we will attach the animation that we want to use. And in this case, again, we're just doing this based off of one sprite. So I'm going to remove all of these wall detections and collision detections. And so let's get into interpolation. All right, so the first thing is that over here, when you click on the frame, this is where you're going to find the interpolation options. All right, so the first one is none, the second one is linear, and then the third one is curve. Now, the linear one means that everything is going to be even as you're interpolating, and then the curved one is going to be that there's going to be a gradual increase and then a gradual decrease. Or if you can think of it, it's just going to be a curve as it goes for movement. So let's start by seeing the difference of these three options first. So I'm just going to add 30 frames to this frame, and then I'm going to copy paste it, and then we're going to come to the X here, and we're going to offset it by -100. So it's going to move to the left. Now, if I just stop and play this right here, you'll see that it's just a flat, it went from 0, 0 to -100, 0. Just like that. There was no smoothing or nothing. All right, so now let's take these same frames here and let's add an interpolation. Now we'll do a linear one first. Now you will notice that I only have put it on the top one, and I will explain this here in a little bit. So now if we click play, you can see that it slowly moved into that -100 position. Now, if you remember, I only put interpolation on this top frame here. The second frame is set to none. However, the second frame had the goal. So what we learned is that the frame above where you want it to interpolate to is the one that is required to be the interpolation setting. All right, so what this is really saying is that we're going to start here, but then in 30 frames, we're going to smoothly, linearly move to this next goal, whatever these related settings are. This could be a color. For instance, if we set this as, say we wanted to turn red, if we played this one, it's going to slowly move to that red hue. Let's say that we put that back and we just want to do a rotation of 360 here. So if we played that, it would do a rotation of 360. So the goal is in the one that is after, and the interpolation is the one that's above. Now, this doesn't mean that this would never be interpolate. Say you had a third frame, fourth frame, fifth frame, and you all wanted this interpolation. They would all need interpolation as you need it. But just to understand the basics of it, that it's the frame above that is doing the interpolation to the next frame's goal. All right, so let me reset these here. And while we're here, you will notice that when it was rotating based off the center. All right, this little red pixel right here. And you can see that it's also right here, the center. So if we go to 0, for instance, now let's start setting up this frame appropriately. The first thing I want to do is center it right here. And let's go to our first frame that is correct. And matter of fact, we'll have to transfer this center here in a little bit. But now I want this center based off of the actual center, because right now, yeah, it's hinging off that top left. But if we were to move the center, and this might take a little bit because I'm not sure the exact center, but we can just sit here and hold it. and that red dot's moving. This is all based off a 1280 by 720 resolution project, so they're pretty big. All right, so now that we have the center right where we need it in the center, now when we rotate it, it's actually going to go based off the center. All right, so that's how you would adjust that. Now, the one thing to note, though, is that in this frame, the center wasn't changed at all. And you can interpolate that. Let's just see what that looks like. So the center is going to interpolate to the next center. All right, so you can do things like that if you need it. But since we want it to be the same, I'm just going to copy this one right here, and then it's 75 on the Y. So now we're there. All right, so the last thing to go over about the basic settings of interpolation is how they loop, how to loop one properly. So for instance, if I take the interpolation off and I turn on the loop for this animation and we hit play, it's going to loop properly. It's going to go the first frame 30 frames, the second frame 30 frames, and it's just going to do its thing. But now when we add interpolation, you might think that, well, all we got to do to loop this is to select them both, click linear interpolation, and then now we can loop them. Well, it's going to end up turning wrong. And the reason why is because if you remember, the frame after the interpolation is the goal. So right here, yes, this one has a goal of this, but this one does not have a goal to get back. So how you solve this is really simple. You just can copy paste the frame, usually the first frame, right? Because you're looping. And then you can adjust this back to one frame, and this one doesn't need interpolation. It just, all this needs is the goal that is the first frame. So we can see that this is exactly the same as the first frame. And so therefore, now the one above it can interpolate back to it, and then it only runs for one frame and then just restarts. Now, if you're noticing that the frames are off because of that, maybe this could be 29 frames. And then that way you would have 29, 30, 1, and then it would go back, and that would technically be 30. Now, I've never actually had an issue with that extra frame. So now if we play tested or played it, now it will go back and forth smoothly like it's supposed to. So that's the proper way to loop with interpolation. All right, so now we can actually get into setting up different things. All right, so my goal for this, let's do this, is I want it to stretch out. So I want it to get wide, and then I want it to shrink really small as it's shooting up into the air. All right, so we're just going to call this the opening sequence. And this first one is going to be called, and I want it to shake first. So I want it to shake just a little bit. Now, do note that you don't have to have all the animations on the same direction or whatever, on the same motion. They can be split up, and then you can use the if animation is complete to start linking your behaviors. So for instance, I'm going to use this template that we had actually, and I'm going to give it a smaller amount though. I want it to go linear back and forth. I don't want it to go that far. I just want it to go like maybe 10. And then this one and this one, I want to be 10 as well. So this one I need -10. And then I want to make sure it's looping, which it is. So now when we get this linear loop, it's going to be going like this. Now that's still a little too slow. So I'm going to change these to say 6. And now when I play it, there's my shaking. All right. So I've got my first direction here. I'll just use these directions as different motions. I will copy paste that, and I will say this will be the, let's widen and shoot up. We'll just do this all on this one. I'll just do the rest of it. So what we're going to do is we need the initial one right here. And we're going to say, yep, we want the center just like that. We do want it to be linear because what we want this one well, let's work on what we want this one to be first. So we don't want this one to move, so we're going to change this back to 0. What I want to happen though is I want the X to get bigger. I want it to get bigger by, say, oh, let's do 200. Now, usually when you're stretching something out, you usually got to bring the other axis in so that it looks better. So we'll bring the Y down to, that's way too low, down to 50. So let's just see what this looks like. And actually, I've already messed up here. I've got to copy this. And this one is going to be the no loop. And so I can delete this one out of the loop one because this is a loop. And I'll just name this loop. And these are the no loops. So I can get rid of shaking right here. All right, so now we have the widen and shoot up. And then it's going to widen. And then we do kind of want it to come back here. So let's just see how that looks. Okay, I didn't take the looping off. So there we go. That is a little too fast maybe. So again, what in here is where we would adjust those frames. So let's say 15 for that. And let's even say 15 coming back. A little too slow, so maybe 10. Maybe it just needed 10. There it goes. So the next part is that we want it to kind of squish in and go upward. So what we're going to do for this one is that it's going to, let's see, that's good right there. And then as soon as it hits this next frame, we want it to, I'm going to make this also have interpolation, but we need a new goal. So remember, this is the goal for this one. So this one came back to this one, and now we need a new goal for this one. So which is going to be right in here. So what I want to happen right here is I want this one to shrink. I want it to, by the end, I want it to be really shrunken. And maybe even 5, let's just say. And I want it to be off the screen. So I want it to be up really high. So since I know that I'm going to place this in the center of my scene and my screen height is 720, so I know that I need to go above 360 at least offset in order to get off the screen. So in my Y, I'm going to go negative, let's just do 400. And now let's just see how that plays. So we can kind of stay zoomed out right here and let's play it. And right away, I know that I had a problem. And that's because right here, I didn't linear the interpolation. And also, I need to give it some time. I need to give it a little bit of time here. So let's see, 10 frames to do those. Let's go 30 frames to complete that upward thing. So yeah, something like that. And you know what? This actually needs to start being squished in when it comes back, I think. Yeah, so it needs to be started to squish in. So let's try that. Okay, so I think that it needs to even be squished in more when it comes back. And I think that it needs to take a little less time to get up there. So let's just double the 20 seconds. All right, so I think this will work just for showing anyway. So now let's go to create a new object. Call it opening sequence. We'll just leave everything as it is. The first one is going to be the shake, right? And since it's our only one, we actually could just leave it not set. It will still do it. And then the next part is we want it to do the loop, which again, it's that one. And all I want it to do is after waiting a certain amount of time, let's just say 1 second. So it's going to shake for a second. Then it's going to play that. And then that's really all we need to show this off. So let's go to our scene here and let's put in this object, get it center on the screen. Whoops. And then let's just play test. And of course it's fighting for its life because I'm in a side view project and did not have gravity check there. And there we go. So you do see that I do need to raise it up. But if I reset it here, you can get a good glimpse of exactly that simple animation. And we did that with all one sprite. All right, so let's move on to a more bar type situation. So I'll just call this a bar because it could be anything. It's just, this is a horizontal bar. All right, so let's look at what we need to know about this. And I'm going to delete these right here. All right, so let's center it for now and do those adjustments. The key to a bar and how to get it to work is to know exactly how it responds to a center. For instance, if we want, let's just say that we had this centered right here as normal, or as you would think would be normal. Now, when we scale in the X, you're going to see that it scales in from both sides. And the same with the Y. Now, the horizontal, the Y doesn't really matter, but say you had a vertical one, it would. Now, the thing is you don't really want it to scale from the X. Usually when you're working with a bar like this, you want it to scale from one side. Say you're doing a health bar and you want it to scale in this way, or for some reason you want it to scale in this way. Well, remember, everything is based off the center. So all you would have to do, and this is really all that is different about this situation, is you just need to throw the X to whatever side that you want, and then the scale is going to work based off of where the center is. All right, so you can see that we could easily do something with, like, say, a growing path or something like that. So for instance, we'll just do something that starts from 0 and it just grows. All right, so this first frame, we'll just say growing line. And let's see, is this on loop? Nope, and it doesn't need to be. So it's just going to simply grow. So the first frame is going to be 0 because we know that we want it to start from 0. And the goal, again, in using interpolation, we need a goal, is we want it to grow 200. Well, let's go even farther. $400 million. And so to get to that goal, remember we need some interpolation, and the interpolation needs to happen on the frame before. So we would go linear, and let's just say that we want, we'll just say it takes 1 second to get there. Now we can playtest, and you can see that it took 1 second to get there. All right. So this could also probably be a design for like a laser, where the laser could grow out like this or something. And it can be used for a health bar or for, like I said, a path leading from one area to another. All right, so as long as you got the center is what's going to happen for the scale, I think that's all we need for this bar. So now let's go to the weapon, all right, because this is I think this is a pretty useful one right here. And we'll say, okay, because a lot of games that are like action oriented actually have the weapon detached from the player sprite. That way you can have separate logic. You can give it a different group even, stuff like that. So the first thing is we will center it for this one. All right. So with this, you're going to have to, well, actually we'll just pretend. Let's delete this. How do I delete that one? Oh, sometimes you have to cut them. Yeah, if it ever bugs out on you like that, you just have to cut them and it will get rid of them. All right, so yeah, we actually will pretend. Let's just say that our player's right here. It's usually right here. And we want it to swing like this. All right, so the first thing that we need to do, and we'll just call this swing, and we'll call this one the sword, because this is the motion of the sword and this is its swing, and technically this is the upward swing. So swing upward. All right, so the player's usually right here, and he's going to swing in a rotational thing like that. So the first thing we need to start with is some rotation. Now right away I'm doing it wrong because I did not get the center where I need it. So let's bring in the center now. So 24 and probably 24. All right. So now when we rotate it, there we go. And so the player's hand is going to be about, we'll just say right here, and it's going to slash it out. So here's our first frame. And let's do an even number. I don't know if it helps the system, the algorithm work better for the pixels, but so now let's get our goal. So our goal is, let's see what happened there. Okay, there we go. Okay, so our goal is we're going to go out a little bit here, and we're going to also rotate a little more, let's just say to -10. And on this one, we want it to interpolate to that point. This one's, I have a feeling is going to need to be pretty quick. So let's see what that looks like. It looks pretty bad, but maybe we can spice it up somehow. The one thing I do want to note, actually, this is a pretty important point, actually. Let's say that we gave this wall detection, all right? And I'll just leave it where it's at. And then let's just say that we gave it attack detection. You can see that the attack detection actually rotated with the object, but the wall detection didn't. So we need to know this. The connection point, the attack detection, and the collision detection, they will all rotate. Now the connection point doesn't really matter because it's just where the other object is or thing is spawning to. But the attack detection and collision detection do matter. So in this case, but the wall detection will not rotate. It will always be a square, and it needs to be for collision's sake. So you usually don't want wall detection on this, so I will just make the attack detection smaller. Now, the one thing to note is if you're ever in this situation and you can't move the attack detection is because you can't have any rotation to scale the attack detection. So while that's a bummer, there is that workaround right there. All right, so there is our attack detection on the sword, and now we can give that back, that -40. And maybe we needed to amplify it more, like -80, maybe. And then let's also maybe move this out. So now let's see what it looks like. It looks a little better. Maybe it's too long this time, though. So we'll go 10. And just so we can keep moving along here, now I'm going to copy paste this one. And I'm going to move it. Let's see, this is -17x. I'm going to move it to 17x. And then I'm also going to rotate it in the counter. So you can see that I just took the X that it was in and I mirrored it. You can see from the bugged out look that it actually looks. If I click on and off, you'll see it's appropriate, but you could see there for a second. And then for the next one, and we want interpolation on that as well. We'll give it 10. Make sure to click linear just to see what it looks like. And then the next one we want to mirror is this one. So I'm going to copy this one, go down here, and I'm just going to give the opposites. So it's going to be 49 instead of negative, and it's going to be 80 instead of 80. And then the only thing we need to do is make sure that we linear it and give it maybe another thing of 10 there. Now this last frame, it doesn't matter if we leave linear on. It could be none. We probably want to leave it the same frames because most likely this is going to be an if motion plays to the end, then it destroys kind of a thing. So we most likely want to leave some frames on it. But let's just see what this looks like. Okay, so it's not as good as it could be. It looks like it needs to be a lot faster. So if we go to 6 now. Yeah, little attack like that. Maybe these ones can even be shorter because they don't travel as far. Maybe that would look better. There. Yeah, something like that. So now if we, made a weapon here and we use the weapon thing right here, and let's make this, well, if we were going to make it loop, then, well, what we'll do here is this. We'll go, when you press A, it will show this animation. So it'll just be not set. And then when you press A, it will show the animation. And then when the motion is done, that's when it will. So we will replace this object over here. I'll just center it just so we can guess where it's going to spawn, because it's going to be blank at first. And now when I press A, the same problem I always have. I'm sure everyone has this problem. Should have done top view. All right, so here we go. And we can see that it looks like an attack. All right, so that's how you would accomplish something like that. So the last thing I would like to show is, let's see, close this project. Yeah, we'll save it. Is something that I actually need to show you. It was a cool little menu I came up with on For the Dwarf. And let's see if I can find it here. It was in the shop right here. And it was just a rotating rune shop thing. And you can see that I had the connection points on it. And then you can see that I made short rotations to it. So that one would rotate like that. And that one would rotate like that. So the thing that I just wanted to point out is that if you're doing a rotation and then an input could rotate it again, you have to make sure that you're starting the rotation correctly. You'll notice that on this, when we start, we're at a zero rotation. Then when we went from 1 to 2, so in this case, item 1 to item 2, then it went from 0 to 45. Then if you were going to start another one, that starting one would have to be 45. So I just wanted to point that out if you're doing rotations like that, to make sure you're very aware of that. And the way that this ended up having to be is I had to have a right rotating and a left rotating. And then in the object here, if we go to the shop under the wheel right here, it was fairly complicated, where you had to, if you pressed right, it would show the proper rotation to show. And then you would keep doing that. And since you had to have a right and a left one, then that's just how it worked in this particular case. Anyway, I just wanted to show that. And then if we watch it here, if we go up to the shop, we can see that it rotates. And then you can buy your runes and stuff like that. So anyway, I hope this video helped learn interpolation a little bit. And if you have any questions, the Discord, Steam forums always open, comments below even. And with that, we'll see you at the next video.